The mic works, everybody.
You're live.
Good morning, everyone, and everyone in attendance today. It's great to see you here as well. Today is Monday, May the 2nd. Welcome to spring and to May. We are recording and streaming this Board of Public Works and Safety meeting live on the City of Madison's YouTube channel, and we will also be archiving it. Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Carl Eaglin?
Here.
Mayor Courtney?
Here.
Mr. Carlo?
Here. Thank you. Board, you had an opportunity to review the minutes from the meeting dated April the 18th.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that the minutes for the April 18th, 2022 meeting be approved.
Second Dave's motion.
Any comments or additions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. No adjustments on the calendar today as I'm looking at our superintendent. Got thumbs up. Moving into unfinished business. I don't see any representatives here for the two resolutions that have been tabled. So we'll move on to new business. And that, turn it over to Joe.
So, this is resolution number 30, oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Resolution number 34B-2022. It's a resolution of the Board of Public Works and Safety of the City of Madison, Indiana. And it's a resolution for the issuance of Waterworks revenue bonds. Whereas the City of Madison Board of Public Works and Safety is the board, is charged with the operation of Waterworks under Indiana Code 8-1.5. And whereas the board has determined that there is a need to undertake certain projects for the improvement of waterworks set forth in Exhibit A hereto, collectively known as the project. And whereas the board has determined that there are not sufficient funds of the waterworks to pay the cost of the project, therefore the requested issuance of waterworks revenue bonds for the payment of such costs are required. Now therefore be it resolved that the board determines that the amount not to exceed $13 million is necessary to pay the cost of said project, or request the issuance of not to exceed $13 million in waterworks revenue bonds by the City of Madison through the City Council. And 3, the board requests that the city increase its waterworks user rates to ensure that sufficient revenues met to meet the needs of the waterworks, including sufficient revenues to provide for the payment of the principal and issuance of the bonds described.
Thank you. I might invite Brian Jackson to come up and perhaps give us a status of the project and the rate ordinance, and then the board can ask any questions they want before we take action on the resolution.
We've already had the first reading of the ordinance. Wednesday night will be the second reading and will be open for discussion. The public hearing of the third reading will be at the second council in May, which I believe is the 17th.
And Brian, give the board a quick update relative to the status of the project, financing with Indiana Finance Authority, and perhaps the timetable that we're on, and kind of critical threshold dates.
Right. We currently are planning on closing the loan by August or September, and in order to make sure we get the 2% rate that we're hoping to get, we need to close by that time, and any delays will possibly jeopardize that 2% rate, and we'd have to restart on the loan, and the amount of increase. But how much else did you want me to give?
Well, I might just fill in a few things here, which is the Waterworks, the Clean Drinking Water Project has been ongoing for a couple of years after the creation of an asset management plan by our engineers that created critical needs that we need to address within our water infrastructure. That involves, really a little bit of everything, which is, pumps and boosters and storage and distribution and treatment.
Treatment plants, yeah.
And treatment. That is translated into a parallel process, which is not only the scope of the project itself, but also how is it financed. How it's financed is by seeking out grants and loans. We've exhausted all of the grant application process with state water infrastructure funding, and we've had numerous conversations with the Jefferson County Commissioners about financially supporting the project. Those conversations are still ongoing, but have not materialized into anything firm yet. So we are at a point where we have to deal with the increase in the rates that have not been changed for about 14 years. And that process involves a recommendation from the Board of Public Works and Safety to City Council for rates and charges. And then City Council will actually go through a normal 3-reading ordinance process to approve rates and charges based upon work that's been completed by our rate consultant.
And our engineer, yeah.
And our engineer.
We've already started the job somewhat. We've done the surveying and done some preliminary design work in order to qualify and get, for the Indiana Finance Authority State Revolving Loan Fund. We had to get certain things done by a certain time frame in order to qualify for these loans.
The part of what Brian's referring to is submission to Indiana Finance Authority, a preliminary engineering review, was essentially our comprehensive asset management plan for the Waterworks. We did receive approval or a letter from them last week indicating that they have approved the PER.
Right. The preliminary engineering
Which
report.
is preliminary engineering report. And now we are completing while we are finishing the scope of the project, and we'll then work on the permitting process and bidding process. We have to deal with the revenue side of that equation, which is to raise water rates in order to support the financing and demonstrate to the Indiana Finance Authority that we have sufficient revenue to repay the loan. As I've said numerous times over the course of the past year in numerous settings, including the newspaper and on social media, nobody wants to pay higher water rates, but we've worked really hard to keep water rates affordable. We have some of the most affordable water rates in the entire state, but we do need to continue to invest in our infrastructure.
Even after the rate increase, we'll still have some of the lowest in the states. And
Yes.
by investing in the infrastructure, it'll help us keep the lower rates as time moves forward into the future when we're gone. So if you don't invest in your infrastructure now, you're not going to have it later on.
And if people want to see the proposed ordinance, the full water rate study, as well as a several-page question and answer document that we've placed to help inform the community, they can come to the City of Madison's website, www.madison-in.gov, and search for utilities, and you'll see all the requisite documents related to this project. And as Brian said, Wednesday will be the second reading of the actual ordinance. Then to stay on schedule for the bond and loan closing, the second council meeting in May, which is May 17th, there'll be a public hearing followed by the third reading of the ordinance. And again, we're doing our best to make sure that we have sustainable water supply. The only way to do that is to invest in our infrastructure, and you can't go decades without maintaining and investing in this particular. While the rate increase may seem significant, it's going to average out to be about $5.50 a month per household. And we'll be able to spread the cost of not only the borrowing for this investment, but also creating a capital replacement reserve that's extremely needed in order to self-fund future investment and maintenance of our water system going forward.
And you're saying we are looking at a 2%, is that locked in for a while? I mean, I know interest rates are kind of
Volatile
going
right
up.
Right now, that's locked in, but if we miss the deadline, then we could lose the 2%. More than likely we will. It depends. There's several things we're contingent that the federal government gives the state government, IFA, money to loan out at a certain rate. But with interest rates going up, I doubt it's going to stay at the 2% just based on, since home loans are now up to 5%.
But right now, we're
As long as we
locked in.
close, right.
But
Where they're proposing a 2% rate, nothing's locked in until we actually get to the
Right, we
closing.
have to get to the closing.
okay.
And that's why timing, I'm glad you asked that question, Carl, because that's why timing's critical. If we miss the deadline in order to take advantage of the low-cost financing, the implication of that is interest rates go up,
Yes.
which then creates a higher level of debt service, which then will have an impact on the rates and will cause a further rate adjustment
Right.
increase in order to absorb the debt, or you have to cut your expenses, which basically means reduce the level of service you can provide. And then the alternative to that is you have to reduce the amount you invest. So there's no real good outcome relative to delaying this project to where we miss the opportunity for low-cost financing from the state of Indiana.
Right, but that's why we had to get a PER in by a certain date to qualify for that rate.
2% is a good rate.
Yeah, yeah.
Keep that. Thank you.
It appears to be like two implications there. Timing is of the essence in order to qualify for the 2% interest rate. And the other is the project. I mean, it's like you said, it's been 14 years since we've had a rate increase. And I think historically, in the past, the city hasn't really looked at rate increases only at a time when there was a major project being
Correct, that's correct.
taken. And hopefully what I'd like to see in the future would be, I'd rather see a periodic increase every
That's
so
in,
many
that's
years.
in the current ordinance. That way
And-
they look at the rates every 5 years to see if it needs an increase.
Right,
Plus the capital infusion we're gonna be getting should help alleviate some major projects from happening. If we can address small projects before they become major ones.
right. And avoid these 15-year, 20-year major increases in rates when we have a $10 to $15 million total project.
I don't wanna
Yeah.
downplay it any, but major, it went from $2.47, it went up $1.88. Less than $2 is the first rate, the highest rate. It went up $1.88 per 1,000 gallons. Per 1,000 gallons. So it
You're literally getting gallons of
the
pump.
percentage is high is because
treated.
our rates are so low. When you
Yeah.
take a number like $1.88 and take it over a small rate to begin with of $2.47, it seems like a large percentage, and it is. But dollar-wise, it's really not that much.
And it's being spoken about, in the context of the percentage a lot,
Right.
which is very misleading. Because when you look at the dollar impact, and we've been very conscientious of the financial impact on our consumers, all of our water users, we've been really conscientious about that, which is why we have sought from numerous sources financial assistance with this project. But we are to the point where we have to deal with the rates, and so this new ordinance does several things, and this rate increase does several things. One is we drilled into our cost so we can understand what does it cost us to produce and sell 1,000 gallons of water across all of the user levels. So we created a base cost. We also are funding a working capital reserve that's never been funded before, and that's going to help us continuously invest in our water infrastructure so that we don't go 20 years again and then it's going to cost us millions of dollars. You invest along the way, you can properly maintain at a lower cost and keep these rates affordable.
That's probably going to be the biggest benefit is the capital
And
improvement fund. We did that with the sewer
Right.
in 2016, 2017, and we're doing it again with the water. We just hadn't had a water rate adjustment since 2008, so we weren't able to do it.
And the third thing that we were again conscientious about, Dave, in the ordinance, we have now in our ordinance it says our rates need to be evaluated not longer than every 5 years, so that will help anybody in the future understand that making incremental changes to the rate structure is much more preferred rather than gigantic or monumental increases. Because the practical aspect of all of this is we're operating a business that is not supported at all by property taxes. It's only supported by user fees.
Correct.
Our expenses change every single year. Inflation erodes the value of our rates every single year, and approximately a third of our last rate increase has been impacted by the cumulative impact or cumulative effect of inflation. So if we have a more regular, more frequent evaluation of our costs and the impact from inflation, we can make more modest changes along the way that are more affordable. But even, I'll go one step further and talk about how conscientious we've been about the impact financially. We have the same thing happening on the other side of our utility function, which is solid waste removal, trash, recycling, and compost. And right now, that rate has not been adjusted in probably more than a decade, and the city is only receiving about $2 and I want to say 46 cents a week per household for all of the curbside trash recycling and compost removal. At the same time, our costs have skyrocketed. We're in the exact same situation with our solid waste removal as we are with utilities. But what we don't want to do is bring both of these rate increases in at the same time. And so we're working out an alternative solution to carry the community through the increases on solid waste removal while we absorb the impacts from the water project, which is much more significant. But we've also had to make a multi-million-dollar investment in the transfer station in order to keep rates down low there because of the cost of operating a transfer station and not having a landfill anymore. So we're juggling a lot of things to keep the services that we offer very affordable across the community. And I will just offer this, which is probably nowhere else in the state can you go and get all of your solid waste removed curbside for $2.46 a week. And nowhere else in the state literally can you go and get all of your on-demand water needs for $4.25 for 1,000 gallons. And so I don't want to downplay the fact that we're in an economy where we have lots of inflation going on, but we are still working very, very hard to make sure this is affordable for everybody in the community.
I know during this study, we also found that the lack of maintenance was kind of surprising.
Right, yeah, they hadn't done anything, they hadn't inspected the tanks, they hadn't done anything for quite some time.
I was surprised with that. I'm glad
Yeah,
we're
and that-
getting on top of it.
Right, yeah, and I don't even remember the last time they were painted.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a little older than I am, so you might remember.
A little bit, not much. Couple of years.
Any questions for Brian? Thank you.
Well, anymore, you made me mad.
I just want to speak about a misconception I think that people have in the community. I know in my discussions, I've had people ask me about this project and about the rate increase, wanting to discuss it. And also, unfortunately, I've seen it on social media being mentioned about the rate increase. And I think there's a misconception out here that people don't realize that the water utility is a separate entity that's not supported by your property tax
Right,
dollars.
that's a misconception by a lot of people.
And I know that I've had it mentioned to me, and I've had to clear up people that they think, well, with this increase, it's going to create a slush fund for the city to take excess money and spend it on other projects that aren't related to the water company.
But the State Board of Accounts doesn't allow that.
And exactly,
Yeah.
and that's what I tried to explain to them, that no, the sewer department is a
Correct.
separate entity, the water department, and that money can only be used for those
That's
purposes.
correct.
But,
Right.
there's just, like I said, there's a misconception out here that, well, we can just take this money and we can funnel it here, we can funnel it there, or wherever it's needed, and that's not the case.
No, that's not the case at all.
And, it's, when the mayor addressed it, when this project started two years ago, we were in a good economy. I mean, we're flying along. Now, with the way things are, with inflation, interest rates, like you say, time is of the essence to get this approved and get in under the 2%
Correct.
funding rate. And it kind of, you know, we all hate to pay,
Interest.
exactly, hate to pay higher rates and we hate to pay interest. But it kind of takes me back to this old TV commercial that I remember seeing several years ago. You can pay me now or you can pay me later. And one way I look at the project is we've got needed improvements that need to be made, they need to be corrected, need to be brought up to date. Inflation's 8.5%. If we don't do the project now, it's gonna cost us more the longer we wait.
And I wanna make this point too, which is, at current inflation rates, we're gonna have the same impact over the next 4 years with regards to the erosion of the value of these rates as it took 14 years. And so what we promised to do when we came into office was be better business managers and use best practices in solving our problems and challenges and creating opportunity along the way. And the opportunity we have here is to not repeat past practices, and that is have an eye toward the future, so that how do we minimize rates in the future? How do we deal with impacts of inflation? How do we constantly invest so that we have the right capacity and sustainability of our water system? And the way you do that is, at some point in time, you gotta say, this is the best way to do this now, and you put practices and policies and ordinances in place that help guide the future. I think that, again, we have done this very thoughtfully, but you know what we can't do, and we had I'll mention a minute ago, or last weekend we had Attorney General Rakita in town, and one of the points he made was, we can't live with our heads in the sand and not be aware of what's going on around us. We have to always be planning for the future. And whether it's streets, sidewalks, parks, sanitation, water, sewer, we want Madison to be successful. And the only way to do that is to constantly and continually reinvest in our city. Any other questions or comments for Brian? And if not, we'll have a motion to approve Resolution 34B and pass this on to City Council's Wednesday meeting. I would invite the public as well as my fellow board members here to attend that meeting, because that'll be the second reading of the ordinance, and hopefully it will again be a good process and get a lot of information out.
Mayor, with that being said, I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number 34-B.
Second David's motion.
Any comments or questions? Comments or questions from anyone in the audience? Hearing none, will simple aye vote work, or we need to work? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. We'll move on to Council Clerk. All right, let's move on to claims, please.
Mayor, I had an opportunity to review the claims. With that, I'll make a motion that the claims be approved as submitted.
Second David's motion.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Chief Wallace, you're here. Do you have anything to report to Board of Public Works, sir?
No, sir.
All right.
I have one little
Yes.
issue, and I went to the Hinkles this morning to have breakfast. I pulled into the parking lot, you know, the handicap area right there, parking. I parked into the second spot. But when I came out, I could see underneath my vehicle, and there's part of a blue, I guess I was in park, may have been handicap parking, or it might be one that was sealed over. But nonetheless, could you identify what it is, whether it still is handicap parking, or had we tried to cover it up?
Okay, that's on Main or in the parking lot?
The parking lot off of Main, second
Okay,
spot on
yeah.
the right.
I'll check on that.
Okay.
Make sure we got clarification.
No, I have a ticket hanging on my window tonight, so, or when I was there. So
We'll make
okay,
sure, yes.
Yeah, if you can check that out, I appreciate it.
Will do, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any other comments? I just want to mention one other thing today, and that is we've had lots of discussion about implementation of a event planning guide to bring structure to the event planning because of how much we value tourism in our community. The city, I think, is a fantastic tourism partner with all the other organizations, whether it be the Board of Tourism or Visit Madison or Madison Main Street, or the number of volunteer organizations that are putting together events. We've been great partners. But I do want to bring up the concern that kind of brought us into this event planning was the lack of good coordination, and the goal of ours is to make sure we put on a safe and successful event. But there's been some pushback on organizing what happens during an event into a plan. So we had taken it upon ourselves to put together the construct of what an event plan would look like with a checklist of information, and if it's applicable, please, here's a description of what we're asking for, fill out the plan. We went one step further. Now online, City of Madison, there's a fillable form. You can go online and type in the information that will automatically populate the plan. It's disappointing, candidly, that there's resistance to putting organization into a plan for Board of Public Works and Safety to review, because what the Board of Public Safety has traditionally only seen is maybe a resolution that described a street closure, which is a very, very tiny part of the plan. But there's an impact on the entire city and city resources when an event occurs. And just to share with you how simple it is for resources to be redirected is just the submission of a paper document from anybody, from anywhere, that says, I want to close the street and I want to have an event. And then that puts into motion police, fire, streets, water, parks, the mayor's office, Board of Public Works, attorneys, puts all of that in motion without anybody saying, well, wait a second, what's your safety plan? How are you going to deal with an emergency? How much resources are you going to need? What's the cost of those resources? How many people are going to be in attendance? What's going to happen on Main Street when you close our entire riverfront or some of our side streets? Who's going to clean up the park when the event's over with? I think it's prudent to start asking these questions, because there's not a cost at all to the redirection of all of those city resources. But there is a cost to the city, and what we want to do is just be thoughtful about how those resources are coordinated. And as an example, our event plan was 12 or 13 pages, and it was mostly just about descriptions. If you're going to do this, here are things you should be thinking about in order to be safe. Go to Columbus, Ohio. They have a 40-page event planning guide. They also have a 3-page listing of all the fees and costs. That if you're going to redirect city resources, here's what it's going to take, because there is a cost. We don't deal in monopoly money. Call up the mayor in Indianapolis and tell them you want to reserve Monument Circle, and then see if that just prompts the motion of resources. We've got to get better organized. We are going to continue to bring structure around the whole event management process in the city. It's been far too long since it's been ignored. There's too many of these that happen over the course of a year, and in some days we might have 3 events on the exact same day where we're literally running around trying to close streets, reserve parks, get water run, mobilize our electrician, get the police to have adequate management across town. we can just do better, and we can also make this a more user-friendly process by bringing more online, so that the application isn't handwritten, and that it doesn't start this whole chain reaction before anybody really has to say, well, what's it gonna take in order to put on an event with 10,000 people over 3 days, or closing a huge part of our area for 9 days. So I think that we can balance this by strongly supporting our tourism efforts, but bringing much needed structure into the environment that will help everybody plan a safer event. And I will say this too, which is they're already doing a lot of the work, but it's not being coordinated very well. And so we will bring it in, because I want the Board of Public Works and Safety to really have a thoughtful understanding about how much work the city is doing to promote tourism, but also what is the impact outside of the footprint and inside the footprint. Because we're all in the risk management business, and I think this is a prudent way to manage the risk and manage resources at the same time. But if people think that we're being unreasonable by asking you to put your plans in writing, go to another community, and I guarantee you that there's going to be less hands-on work between that organizer and the city before things are codified. We just need to have a better understanding about what we're doing, because it has been very, very disorganized for a really long time. But look forward to more of that as we progress into bringing it online and bringing more structure into the event planning process. And I'll close with that, and also thank everybody who was involved in the Mad Hot Music Festival last weekend. It brought great tourism to the community. All the businesses seem to have done very, very well over the weekend. City Hall was turned into a music venue, and that was fun and interesting to see the change and people's reaction when they came in here to listen to music, because this is something that's been used very differently in the past, but it worked out well. I want to thank everybody, and definitely my staff that put a lot of work into making that happen with the event organizers. Ford, any final thoughts?
Sorry, I was busy, couldn't find a good parking place. I had to park near the river.
No, it sounds like you parked in the handicap spot.
Well, I did, that was today. That was today. I'll turn myself in for that. So,
That was because of the
Saturday
hour
was
before after
thinking.
the weekend.
Saturday was thinking.
Yep.
Good weekend.
I still think we're well within the statute of limitations on that citation if we.
Was this like a confession?
Yeah, sounded like more like a confession.
That's right.
Anything else, Board?
No, everything I say gets me in trouble. I'm done.
Board, if there's nothing else, if there's no public comment, we'll invite anybody here to address the Board of Public Works and Safety. Seeing no one mobilizing toward the podium, we'll have a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting will be Monday, May 16th, 2022. May is going to be an exciting month, so thank everybody in advance for all the work they're doing to bring fantastic things to our community.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second that motion.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Perky, work out okay for you?
I need to agree.
Okay, good, yeah. Good, yeah. What's wrong, your back hurt? The boys are really on that cut, y'all. So they said they